Okay, everyone, I think we're going to get started. Just want to say thank you all for joining us. I did mention in our email that we have a really full, awesome agenda for this call, so we want to get started as quickly as possible. My name is Rachel Robinson. I'm the Vice President of MedTech, and we are so excited that you are here with us today to hear from some really outstanding speakers about some updated information on the CARES Act and other things. Especially want to focus on at the end of the event last week, we got a lot of feedback that we as a group would like to talk more about how to inspire our teams remotely during this time. So we've asked Scott Schorer of GI Dynamics to lead that section at the end of the event. But just a few housekeeping tips to remind you to keep your phones and devices on mute so there's no background noise. If you do have questions, there is an option to raise your hand in your screen. If you want to raise your hand whenever you have a question, we will wait for the appropriate moment and pause our speakers to make sure we get your questions answered. So I think that's where we want to get rolling. So I'll introduce Brian Johnson, President of MedTech, to get things started.
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everybody, and thank you again for joining us. I am delighted to welcome Representative Lori Trahan to our town hall today. The Congresswoman's district, the 3rd district, is a place that holds special meaning to me. I started my career as a newspaper reporter at the Eagle Tribune, covering the Merrimack Valley, and the Twin River cities of Lawrence and Lowell are very close to my heart. She's a great champion of our industry. This district, the 3rd district, contains, by my count, at last count, almost 80 medical device companies. We're delighted to have her join us today. I'm going to go ahead and welcome Representative Lori Trahan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Rachel. I know, remember, it was just a couple of weeks ago, I was working hard to just clean up the Merrimack River. How long ago that seems at this moment. But I want to thank you for inviting me to speak today. There's no question this is a perilous moment for our country and extremely important that we continue to share information and resources. So I'm happy to do that for you. I can't believe how vital your community has been to sharing that information with me as we kind of go and legislate and deliberate these packages. Last Friday, I quite literally got in my car and drove to Washington after tucking my daughters into bed to vote for the CARES Act. A $2.2 trillion relief package. It is designed to shore up our communities that are suffering because of the dual risks from the virus and the health risks that poses, but also the massive increase in joblessness as we, became so evident to us with this morning's reportings. So I'll just tell you a little bit about the provisions in the package. I'm sure many of them you already know, and hopefully companies in your membership are taking advantage of. But first and foremost, it sends direct cash payments to more than 150 million households. For taxpayers and for Social Security recipients who earn less than $75,000, they'll be eligible for a $1,200 cash disbursement. It also establishes loan programs for businesses to help them maintain payroll and survive the downturn. $350 billion for a new SBA Paycheck Protection Program. This will offer loans up to $10 million for small businesses and nonprofits so that to continue paying their employees. The first 8 weeks of payroll loans can be forgiven if these businesses continue with their payroll. It also provides $10 billion for Small Business Administration emergency grants for up to $10,000 to provide immediate relief for small business operating costs. And then lastly, it provides for $17 billion for standard SBA business operating loans, but with a promise that no payments would be due for at least 6 months. And this aid is available for both current borrowers as well as new borrowers of programs like the SBA's 504 loan program. The CARES Act also expanded and extended unemployment. It added $600 to unemployment insurance for everyone who receives those state benefits. It waives the waiting week so that those in need can get help straight away. It adds another 13 weeks of unemployment for those who have exhausted their state unemployment benefits. And it also makes the self-employed and gig economy workers eligible for those benefits. In order to protect our healthcare workers and our frontline personnel, we've also greatly boosted funding to our healthcare system and invested in manufacturing capabilities to increase production of personal protective equipment. And it's the only acronym I can safely use that the whole world now knows, PPE, and certainly for other medical equipment. That's $100 billion for hospitals and providers taking on coronavirus expenses, $250 million in hospital preparedness grants, and $27 billion to an emergency fund so that the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response can purchase and distribute PPE and other medical countermeasures through the Strategic National Stockpile. This massive package is historic. It's the biggest relief package in our history. It's a down payment on the relief that our families and our economy desperately need during this unprecedented time. And I do firmly believe, I've now done 2 teletown halls, I'm doing another one tonight, and I just firmly impress upon everybody what I know to be true is that we'll all get through this together. To that end, I have to say that I'm grateful for the leadership exemplified by the biotech and the device companies, not only in my district, but across the Commonwealth. In my first year, I was able to visit so many of the innovative medical device companies like Zoll and Boston Scientific, Smith & Nephew, Transmedics. And so many of those companies are stepping up right now in this time of crisis to retool their manufacturing to produce ventilators, testing kits, and PPE. I was just on the phone with Hologic and Marlboro, and they've repurposed their swabs for COVID-19 test kits. So just a really big thank you to all of you out there. As you know, your president, Brian Johnson, has remarked, this is our Dunkirk moment. And as we continue to confront the health component of this crisis, everything we do should give confidence that we will get through this if we stick together and we look out for one another. So with that, I'd love to move to questions, but just a big thank you to you and your members for everything you've done to step up.
Thank you so much, and thank you for those great words. You know, I think we often have to balance the present with the future and trying to figure out what's going to come next while sort of, you know, what I call mourning what we've lost, and, you know, sort of the unsurety of what the situation. I wanted to ask you really quickly, you know, look, we were all relieved to see the CARES Act get signed, but, you know, I think we all are wondering what's next, what is in the pipeline for another package. You know, we're hearing some mixed signals. If there is to be another package, you know, any thoughts in terms of where some of that would go, or some of the initiatives that might be part of that?
Absolutely. So there's no question in my mind there's going to be another package. And I, you know, whether I'm talking to constituents or people like yourselves, it's like the sequence matters right now. We're in the middle of a public health crisis, and everything that we're doing right now is to ensure the safety and the health of all Americans. There will be a time for us to stimulate the economy, but what we're doing right now is basically using the tools that we have at our disposal to keep people afloat. I mean, the economy is on pause. We've never seen anything quite like, where demand has collapsed and supply is so limited. So it is important that we think about it in those terms. I mean, certainly we're tracking the health insurance needs of the unemployed to see if we need to provide more relief. There's a subset of folks who are going out on unemployment, and that extra $600 gets them closer perhaps to 100% wage replacement, and maybe some of those folks will be able to apply for Medicaid, but there are so many who will not. And so we have to ensure that folks have healthcare coverage, as well as the funding needs of our cities and towns and first responders. I was on a phone call this morning with the town in my district who the fire department has been called into a senior living facility 18 times since Friday. There have been a number of deaths and number of people who have been transported out of that facility, going to our local hospitals. And, it begs the question, do our cities have what they need to respond to this crisis, given what we just passed? I also think stronger protections for our frontline healthcare workers, emergency support for our students and our educators. There's a lot of talk about guarantee of no-cost COVID-19 treatment for all individuals. And one thing that I'm on the Armed Services Committee, and I think about as we consider infrastructure, and it's one of the things that we're discussing in the Democratic caucus for sure. I'd like to include an overhaul of our national strategic stockpile and our domestic manufacturing capability and agility in times of pandemic. I mean, right now we've seen so many companies step up, but I think that provides a lesson and a roadmap for us in the future, one that might actually follow what we do for our military and those who supply our military in a wartime footing.
I see some questions coming in, and again, if you click on participants, everybody, you can raise your hand. So Rachel will be tracking that. But Congresswoman, big picture, is there anything that what in your opinion is this crisis exposing in terms of the most glaring needs of our healthcare system?
Well, I think the hardest part, of all of this is the lack of protection that our frontline workers are going and enduring day in and day out. I mean, I can't tell you how heartbreaking the phone calls I get from nurses. My sister is a nurse. So many of my dear friends are nurses and doctors, and there is real anxiety and fear about the supply of PPE. And I'll tell you that the idea of our front line has actually been redefined in this moment, right? We talk so often about our healthcare workers. I mean, they are our heroes, for sure, our first responders. But our grocery workers are, our big box store workers, our gas station, our delivery men and women, our, janitors and custodians who are keeping these places clean and disinfected. I mean, there are so many people who are going to work. And if we can't supply our healthcare workers, our doctors and our nurses with the equipment, and we're talking basic equipment, masks, gowns, gloves. I mean, think of the line behind them of everybody who is going to work with that anxiety of, am I going to get sick or make my family sick? And so I do think that just from a pandemic standpoint and how our preparedness for this moment, there are a lot of lessons to wring out of this moment. Mm-hmm. Certainly we have many protocols that our hospitals are in direct communication with the Department of Health and Human Services, and those calls, we're on, we know, we understand the capacity, and we understand, who's adding more ICUs, who needs overflow, et cetera. Not so much for our privately owned senior living facilities that we're finding have huge variation in protocols, and those are going to be our hotspots in terms of mitigating testing and getting people out of there, putting them into facilities so that we're not infecting an entire unit. I mean, we've learned these lessons quite quickly in the state of Washington, and we need to adjust here in Massachusetts to those lessons. So I think This is learned by doing right now, and there are so many folks who are on the front lines that are actually ingesting those learnings so quickly and adjusting. But I think that there's going to be gaps that are exposed that we need to fix for the long term.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we're seeing a lot of supply chain gaps, especially with PPE. I think that's exposed some significant gaps in the supply chain domestically, and I wonder after this if we'll ever let the healthcare supply chain be so dependent on offshore resources.
You know, I'm getting ready to release a proposal and also fight really hard for inclusion in the fourth package, which will speak exactly to that. You know, in the Armed Services Committee, we have Buy America, we have Berry Amendment, we have things in place that when we are at war, we are able to, and this is a partnership between the federal government and our manufacturers here to ensure our national security, to ensure that we are not dependent on shipments from foreign countries to either protect our servicemen and women or to protect our homeland. We have to have that same footing and those same guidelines and criteria for a public health crisis like the one we're living in. I could not agree more.
Absolutely. So just a couple questions here. I see. First one, any information on efforts and ways to optimize the public health response on a national scale instead of city, local response optimization? So, you know, we're all kind of doing this municipality, statewide, and it's like, seems like 50 different efforts and it's colliding. What are you guys seeing in terms of nationalizing this on a broader scale?
I think that there is widespread frustration in the fact that there hasn't been a national strategy right out of the gate to deal with this health crisis that, frankly, we knew was coming. The patchwork of orders on a state-by-state approach, in some respects on a county or municipality level, does not help the bigger cause. You know, I was one of the first legislators that co-sponsored, you know, the national shelter in place for 2 weeks, just because, you know, I live in a border district. My parents live in Nashua, New Hampshire. I mean, it doesn't matter what Massachusetts does in terms of, you know, shelter in place or stay at home advisories if our surrounding states are not doing the same. And so this is, you know, a pandemic has national impact, and we need to have, you know, a national strategy. So I do, right now, I think there are a lot of folks who are being mindful of the solidarity that's needed to, you know, to beat this virus. But, you know, certainly with an eye towards putting pressure on things like a Defense Manufacturing Act and making sure that we are invoking that, making sure that we're giving our manufacturing floors the resources that they need to quickly retool and help out with this, you know, national effort to produce PPE, ventilators, and such. But, you know, it is a game of catch up right now, and it should not have been. But I think that going forward, there should be some automatic triggers in terms of, you know, when we see the makings of a public health crisis, a pandemic, an infection rate, certain things should automatically be put into place on a national scale so that we don't have this patchwork of localized strategies.
Rachel, I know that a couple people have raised their hand. Do you want to moderate?
Absolutely. So maybe we'll do one or two more quick ones, because I know, Congresswoman, you have a full schedule today.
Yes, I know. I've got a hard stop at 12:30, but we still have a few minutes.
Absolutely. So just quickly, one of the ones that was very interesting to me based on the conversation we're having later, right? We're all social distancing. We're spending very little time with others in the same room. It can be incredibly lonely, even if you're not alone. What kind of things are you doing with your staff, and what keeps you motivated, right, to stay connected, and what kind of tips do you have?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure I've mastered it any better than you all. I think it's important that we acknowledge that it's not working from home that's the hard part, but the social distancing is the real hardship. I mean, everyone misses spending time with their friends and their family. I mean, my mom used to frankly take care of my kids. She's 72 years old. I've got two little ones. They're 9 and 5. And she was so much a part of what gave me license to travel back and forth to DC. And we're living without her and my father right now. My father has multiple sclerosis. And so they have been sheltered in their condo now for almost 3 weeks. And of course, my kids miss hugging their grandparents. I miss seeing my mom on a daily basis. But I think, that's acknowledging that is the hard part, I think, and making that discussable is really important. I mean, we've never done anything like this before. I'm planning my daughter's 6th birthday on Saturday, and it's going to be online. I mean, it's unlike anything. But, you have to keep your morale up. I mean, in terms of my team and my work environment, we Zoom every morning. And it's quite funny. We've been trying to figure out how to incorporate Zoom into the mix almost for 14 months now. And then in the midst of this crisis, it took us all but 24 hours to have it up and running. So, there are some silver linings that happen in times like this. But I think we have to look out for our mental health. Even I have to keep myself in check. There are so many things right now to respond to as we deliver services to our constituents and to our small businesses. And everyone on my team is working 7 days a week and long hours. And we have to acknowledge that that's hard, and give each other a break and let people tap out, because the content is hard and it's heartbreaking in many instances. But what keeps me motivated? I take lessons and courage from our frontline workers, and that frontline has been redefined. And I think as long as folks are putting their own health second to those that they're serving, you're going to see me very spry-like jump out of bed every morning to support them.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate what you said about being patient and having, I think, a lot of empathy for one another, right? We're all ingesting a lot of information. Okay, one quick thing and then we'll let you go. If our members would like to contribute ideas to your office or the next bill, what do we do?
Yes, no, I appreciate that question. And even on the last bill, I can't believe whether it was our community health centers, our Head Start programs. I mean, this is how we sort of get our ideas and find out where the gaps really are, from the practitioners, the people who are on the ground and they feel it and they see it and they're living it. So please don't hesitate. Everybody from our team is working from home, but if you dial 978-459-0101, that automatically gets rerouted to a few people on our team, and we've been answering those phone lines. I mean, from everything from helping, I think we've helped nearly 100 people get back to the United States from abroad. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a constituent service, something with unemployment insurance. There are just questions, but certainly our Washington team, which you can also get to through that phone number, you'll be rerouted to our Ledge team on ideas for the next package. Greatly appreciated. No one does this job alone, so would definitely welcome your expertise.
Congresswoman, thank you so much for taking your time this morning. I'm sure if everyone could clap, they would, but it's been fantastic. We really appreciate.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. All right.
Absolutely. Have a great one. Thank you.
You too. Be safe. Take care.
Bye-bye. Okay, that was a great way to start the program, and we've got even more awesome stuff lined up. So I think what we'll do right now is Anthony, the Director of Government Relations from ML Strategies. Anthony DeMaio, are you ready to roll?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can. This is great. I'm going to pass the torch over to you.
Great, thank you. And I just want to begin, and I'd be remiss if I didn't, in recognizing what a get that was for MassMedic to have Lori Trahan on. Some of you will remember she, I think it was September 7th or something of 2018 when she won that primary. And I think before the results were even certified, there was that horrible Columbia gas line explosion in her district. And she was thrust in to lead her community even as a candidate. She's been doing it ever since. And I think the people of the Merrimack Valley are very fortunate to have her in office today. So bravo, and I was happy to hear from her. She mentioned a few things from the CARES Act that are relevant to, I think, the MassMedic community. But I wanted to highlight one, and I'll share my screen. I'm getting used to Zoom, but we'll see if I get it here. I wanted to highlight a couple. And the one we've gotten the most questions at ML Strategies, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Congressman Frank Ginta and Aaron Josephson on the line too, who might be able to jump in. The one we've got the most questions about, I'm trying to advance the slide, there you go, is what's called the Paycheck Protection Program. And the Congressman mentioned it briefly. It is the new SBA loan program authorized by the stimulus package with $349 billion. We just call it 350. It's specifically designed to help small businesses, which is sort of a liberal definition because it's businesses under 500 and in some cases, including perhaps yours, even larger. It's intended to help that class of employer make payroll for 2 months. So an eligible business can borrow 2.5 times their monthly payroll, which is calculated by wages, salaries, rent or mortgage interest, and utilities. So it's a pretty big number, and as long as that loan is used for eligible expenses, i.e. making payroll for 2 months, it's forgiven or forgivable. So you'll see here on this slide and in the materials that Brian and Rachel will forward to you, there are eligibility requirements to obtain the loan, and then eligible expenses that can be used with the proceeds. And if the loan funding isn't used for those, and headcount isn't maintained, and salaries aren't maintained, then the forgiveness is reduced proportionally. But if it's followed to the letter, which is pretty clear and documentable, it is completely forgiven, i.e. turned into a grant. So it's a pretty good deal. So I would encourage anyone who's considering it to look into it and potentially avail yourself of it. The loans will be written by SBA authorized banks. Your banking partner may already be SBA authorized. I would collect your documentation of payroll and other expenses. Take a look at the application, which Brian and Rachel will send you, and contact your bank sooner rather than later. You want to get in the front of the line. Applications are going to begin to be accepted tomorrow, and they'll be held open for a couple of weeks. But we expect this money to go. 350 billion is a lot, certainly by any definition, but this is also a far-reaching crisis, and I think almost every small business in the country has been affected and would be eligible. So I would encourage you to, if you're interested and eligible, compile the information as soon as possible and get in touch with your bank. And I've just gone over some of these points here in the application process. There is a sample application online that you can look at. It's not the final but it doesn't matter because you're going to have to apply through the bank rather than an online portal with SBA. So although the application is on the SBA website, the form, I should say, the process will go through your bank. And it doesn't matter what bank, all banks are going to be treated, are going to treat the loans the same. And some of those provisions I think are important to note. No bank is going to charge an application fee. Those are going to be waived and covered by the government. So you won't be charged to apply, and even if you end up withdrawing or not getting one. The loans are 100% guaranteed by the federal government, meaning you're not going to be responsible for making a personal guarantee or to pledge any collateral, which makes this a lot easier. You don't have to prove an ability to repay the bank, the loan right now, because obviously that's very difficult to do given the situation. All you have to do is prove that you were in business at the time of this this crisis. I think the marker date they're using is February 15th. And you'll have to make a few certifications. They're listed here, and these are self-certified on the application form. The disruptions related to the crisis make the loan necessary to support payroll. You're going to use the funds to retain or rehire workers if you've already had to do furloughs or layoffs. And you're going to use the funds to maintain payroll or make other eligible expenses. That you're not going to try to get two of these loans. That should go without saying. And that when the loan period is over after 8 weeks, you'll be able to provide the documentation that you used it for the intended purposes. Now, I'm sure that raised a bunch of questions, so I'll be happy to answer them. But before I do, I also wanted to mention another thing that we've been getting a lot of questions on, and that's the series of tax provisions for businesses that were in the CARES Act. You'll see just sort of the titles of them here. Brian and Rachel are going to distribute some more detailed descriptions of each of them that some of the tax lawyers and at MINS have put together. But I would highly recommend that you get in touch with your tax professionals, CPAs or counsel, and go over these. Make sure that you're availing yourself of whatever you're eligible for. You'll see at the top there's the employee retention credit. If you've had to close or partially suspend your business, or you've had a 50% decline in receipts, you are eligible for a credit for wages that you are paying your employees through this time. You can also delay your payroll taxes. The employer contribution to Social Security tax has been deferred, effective last Friday when the bill was signed, through the end of the year, and you're going to have 2 years to catch up on that. So that should help with cash flow in your businesses. This one is one that another member of our delegation, Chairman Richie Neal, has pushed very hard for, was sort of relaxing the NOL provisions. If your business is carrying a net operating loss going back to 2018, the CARES Act allows you to carry that back up to 5 years. So that also should help with cash flow. But I can sort of speak in broad strokes to these, but I would highly recommend that you get in touch with the tax professional to help to understand them and make sure that you're taking advantage of everything there. And I'll stop sharing the screen and go to questions if there are any.
Awesome. We've got tons.
Okay, great.
So we will try to get everyone's questions in. It looks like everybody's chiming in on the chat bot as well, which is awesome. So I think one of the first questions I'd like to ask is around employees.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had a couple questions come in on the chat bot and through others that I've talked to, right? A lot of smaller companies will work with consultants or pay contractors.
Right.
Can those be included in the total payments, because they're not technically full-time employees, but they are being employed by the company?
Yeah, so 1099 workers are eligible for these loans. And that's an interesting dynamic. They actually, and it's fact specific. It'll be dependent upon each situation, but in some cases, those people can apply for their own loan. So if you're a 1099 and you've got arrangements with a whole bunch of different companies for which you do consulting work, you can get your own paycheck protection loan. And the term payroll has a definition in statute that would apply to the way you pay yourself as a 1099 rather than sort of the traditional definition.
Okay. So I guess if a company is pulling this together, they should really only consider the people that are full-time on the books for them. And then one of the questions was, what dates are we using for, right? Should they be considering full-time employees that were from like January 1 until now? Is it a full year? What kind of time frame?
So there is a period which was clarified in the guidance that was released this week by the SBA, which is helpful. They are going to go by the average from, I believe it's February to June of last year.
February to June of last year. Okay.
So if you average your monthly payroll in that period, and don't quote me because of Zoom, I don't have it in front of me.
That's fine.
But it's clear in that document that that you'll provide the membership.
Yes.
That will be the sort of the benchmark for what eligibility for the eligibility criteria.
Okay, great. Okay, awesome. So I know we have had a couple people ask about VC or private equity backed companies. Yeah. Is there going to be any clarification on that, or has there been?
Well, without question, the concern that's raised the most is about the eligibility of companies backed by PE or venture money. Right now, and that's subject to change, but right now, all of the affiliation rules of the standard SBA 7A loan programs apply, which would mean, and then it's a fact-based test, but it means if you're controlled by VC or PE money, you're probably ineligible. If you and all the affiliates of the PE roll up to more than the 500 threshold of employees, you're probably ineligible. So it's a case-by-case assessment based on the structure of the company. And we've had some attorneys digging into that and trying to help our clients understand whether they do or don't meet the test. But as of right now, those haven't been waived. Now, it's important to note there's a lot of support from Republicans and Democrats to relax that, to perhaps make more rather than fewer small businesses with PE backing eligible. And it's unclear at this point whether this round of PPP loans will be affected by broadened guidance, but this is probably not the last of this kind of support. We could easily see this program reauthorized at a similar level in phase 4 legislation, and perhaps see some tweaks to the affiliation language in that bill.
Yeah, and I just want to add, from an advocacy standpoint, MedTech signed on to a letter sponsored by the National Venture Capital Network and many other partners in this space to pressure and ask for lawmakers to overturn that.
Yeah, as of right now, it hasn't been, but that we'll keep on it and let you know, and certainly in the future, it's possible.
Okay, so definitely have a couple more. The PPP versus the SBA disaster loan. Mm-hmm. Could companies apply for both, or does one prohibit from the other?
Neither prohibits from the other. You can apply for both. The EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, is a smaller number. I think it's capped at 2 million.
Okay.
But there was also a $10 billion appropriation for grants in the CARES Act. So if you go to apply for one of those EIDLs, you can get, and you are determined to be eligible, you can get $10,000 immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, the loan will come on, you know, when it gets approved. But it's important to know that they can't be used for the same purpose. There's different eligible uses for each of those loan classes. And if you do get both, if you get the EIDL and then get a PPP, the EIDL will be refinanced into the Paycheck Protection Loan, and that $10,000 advance I mentioned will be taken off of your forgiveness. So you will end up, you know, paying that over time. But the terms of the PPP are very generous. I think it's down to 0.5% interest with payments deferred for at least 6 months. So
Awesome, thank you. Angus, I know you had a question. Do you want to take yourself off mute and ask Anthony?
Sure thing. Thanks, Rachel. Angus. Hi, Anthony. How you doing?
I'm fine, Angus. How are you?
Doing well.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. It's a quick clarifying question that I had on the VC and PE-backed company question.
Yeah.
So one of the sticking points on the SBA loans has been that traditionally a company has to be profitable in order to be eligible for those loans. So startups that don't yet have VC or PE backing, I'm sorry if I missed this in your earlier response, are they eligible if they are pre-VC, pre-PE, but not yet profitable?
You mean, so this is a separate question from having PE backing, because this could be a startup that just, yeah, they are, you don't, yeah, profitability, exactly. Profitability is not an eligibility requirement for,
okay, good,
for the loan program, yeah. So they're actually probably in a better position than if they'd been, you know, in a controlled, you know, situation from PE or VC.
Thank you.
Great.
Sure.
That was actually part of my last follow-up question too, because I know we've probably got 2 more minutes and then we'll let you go. And then just everyone, if you have additional questions as we go, you know, we will make sure, Anthony, we can share your team's information that you sent over. And if you have further questions for ML Strategies, they're an excellent partner for this type of thing. So you can definitely reach out to them directly for questions and help. I know they're willing to chat. My last question then is kind of piggybacking on Angus's to say, any specific tips for pre-revenue companies? Is there anything specifically they should be doing if they're still in kind of the seed or getting started, other than what everyone else is doing in the small business world?
No, I mean, I think you're fortunately in the same boat that a lot of others are. I think the best advice that we've been able to give our clients, and that they're all over the country, like these law firm clients have been calling in, is assemble the documentation, take a look at that application, make sure you have everything you need to fill it out, and get in front of your bank. Odds are your bank is already SBA approved. If not, there's a list of the 100 most active SBA lenders on their website. But like I said before, every bank is going to treat this the same. No fees, no collateral, no personal guarantee necessary. But, you know, obviously you'd want to, you know, your bank knows you. So to the extent possible, I would go there. And yeah, that's like I said, $350 billion is going to run out. So the sooner the better.
That's excellent input. Brian, did you have any other questions before we move on?
No, thank you, Anthony. That was great. And, you know, I know we've taken a good look at this. I would just stress everybody, take advantage of these programs while you have it. And, you know, if you can give your workers another 2.5 months of pay, it's the right thing to do. And hopefully we all take advantage.
Fantastic. Anthony, thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. And like they said, we're happy to help out if we can. Rachel, just send my stuff and our contact information. We're happy to assist if we can.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, great. So I think next, Stacy Swider, we're going to ask you if you're ready to join us. Stacy runs the Center of Excellence for SBIR at UMass Lowell and has been really influential in updating us about all of the programs that are available for small companies and companies looking to kind of access different capital, especially during this crazy time. So Stacy, I'm happy to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And a big thank you to Anthony DeMaio and also the Congresswoman for their discussions about the landscape. We're going to shift gears now from, I think that was a lot about keeping your business running, keeping payroll going. My area of expertise is coaching teams about how to hop onto SBIR grants and contracts and different types of grants and contracts. A lot of them are the same. So I'm going to talk today about purchase orders. So if you have some, I'm not sure if the audience here, if there's people who have things that they want to sell now or are close. And then I'm going to talk about all the grant openings for people with solutions, COVID solutions. So to help me, I will see if I can share my screen. I just have 2 slides. So short term, either way, if you're registered in SAM, great. If you're not, please do that right away. It could take up to 4 weeks, even 6 weeks just to get fully registered. You have to get a cage code. And so just figure that out. I got the logo at the bottom, beta.sam.gov. Okay, so register your company. There are a couple big solicitations open right now. Sometimes the easiest way to find things is honestly just Google or onto beta.sam.gov. If you search there and just type in COVID-19, you will come up with a lot of, it's sort of a lot. Some are things that are already purchased. So you see these purchase order numbers, but then solicitations that are open right now. You'll see I have listed this FEMA one for COVID-19 personal protection equipment, as the Congresswoman mentioned, and medical supplies that's open till September 5th. The states of both New York and Massachusetts, possibly others are coming online, but they have requisitions open right now. So areas where you can say, hey, this is who I am, and this is what we're offering. These are for solutions for right now, or maybe within the next 2 or 3 months. They need things like 3D printers on the front lines. So if you have a way to ship a kit of 3D printers, if you have ways to convert equipment into ventilators, some of the other things they're looking for, I had a list in my head. Some of the logistics stuff that's right away, but mostly it's protective equipment, is the right now stuff. Some companies need NREs, so they need some non-recurring engineering. For instance, if you want to make masks, you want to do injection molding, well, now you're going to make a mold. So my advice there is be smart about it. Government cannot pay you for something. Let me rephrase that. Government can only pay you for deliverables. So if you need an NRE, so say you need $250,000 to complete your engineering, so you can do that injection molding. In your proposal, just say on day 1 or day 2 of this contract, we will ship you paperwork with our plan, right? And just say it's a $250,000 plan, okay? And they'll just talk to them and work that out with them. So I know FEMA is definitely looking for solutions, and that is probably the right place to go. Army Corps of Engineers is supporting FEMA. MedCom, Army MedCom is supporting FEMA. The order of attack in the order of logistics support in the military is Army, Navy, Air Force, but I'm going to circle back to Air Force. So in terms of who pushes out, but the way I'm seeing it right now is they're mostly, for right now, under FEMA, and that has to do with the way the nation organizes itself, is that DoD is mostly set up for fighting overseas, and FEMA is mostly set up for responding internally in the nation. So that's why you see even Army Corps of Engineers supporting FEMA. So I just want to share with you about why you want to go to FEMA, but you can also, of course, go directly to hospitals, pick up the phone. You can look at who's already selling to FEMA and hop on their contract. Any contract or purchase order that's already open that you can hop onto is your fastest way. And this is also true for grants. So let's talk about grants. Let's see if I do page down. Okay, longer term. And longer term could be anything, again, from 3 months to 3 years. So in this group, I would say it's more like I have a test kit, but it needs R&D. I have a new vaccine that I'm working on. Be careful of, I think with this cohort and this meeting, I trust you're all really medicine focused because you're aligned with Mass Medic. There are some calls for decision support, readiness, logistics, things like antiviral coatings, UV disinfectants, disinfecting, that was what I would say, that's a big one. They're trying to figure out how to disinfect masks so they can reuse the face mask type mask, the clear plastic kind. But just be careful of tin ear. There's a lot of people who are volunteering. There's a lot of people with very, very serious solutions. So two things, do not divert your company for this crisis. This crisis seems like the only thing happening in the world right now, and it truly is the biggest thing happening. A lot of it will pass. A year from now, it will be mostly over. We'll have a vaccine. So be careful of that. Don't retool your whole factory and put yourself out of business. Trust me, 3M, Ford, GM, Sanofi, like they're all working on it. They're all getting Title III money. So just choose wisely and choose carefully. Sorry, I was trying to put that in there. If you have a vision for your company, don't trip yourself up over this. It'll pass in a year. Okay, but there's some awesome vehicles out there. BARDA is the part of Health and Human Services that is really, really, really set up for this. So they have 2 BAAs open right now. The DRIVE is the easy BAA, so it's not so much a whole long white paper process, and that's limited to $750K. If you could hop on that, great. And they have a bigger nominal BAA, which also has an April 30 deadline. So both those have an April 30 deadline. NIH has this PA 18935, urgent competitive revision. So this gets into what I was saying before on whether to purchase order. You can hop on someone else's purchase order that's already out there. But if someone has a grant, like for instance, I'm helping a team hop on a grant at UMass Lowell, because a team at UMass Lowell, they're taking everybody. So you can be a university and be the PI. You can be a small company and be the PI. And you can be a big company and be the PI. So they're the principal investigator. So they're taking everybody. So be clever with your teaming. If you can hop on, particularly with, like say UMass Lowell is connected to UMass Medical, right? So make sure if you have to go through clinical studies, get a medical school on, right? So hop and work with UMass Medical. They'll pick up the phone or contact me or contact Marianne Picard at M2D2 at UMass Lowell. So see what grants you can already hop on. And they have open grants as well in some of their other institutes, like the Heart, Blood, and Lung Institute, NHBLI. National Science Foundation has a rapid open. So that's limited to phase 1, limited to 200K, but it's rapid. So I believe that'll come out it's open now. I believe it also closes April 30th. And again, NSF, SBIR, Google it, you'll get to all the pages you need. They have the same, if you're familiar with the NSF project pitch process, they're using their same project pitch process, but they get your pitch back to you in 5 days. It is okay if you have an NSF grant. So usually NSF limits you to the number of grants. They're waiving that for now. If you already have 2 NSF grants for something else, if you want to hop on the rapid for your specific COVID solution, that's okay. They're allowing that. They are limiting 1 project pitch at a time though. So wait 5 days. If you don't make it in, then you can resubmit. There are consortiums. So this 5th bullet, MedTech, this is an Army consortium. Consortiums are a little odd. They're generally pay-to-play organizations set up with these primes that just are used to supporting Army, Navy, Air Force. But these are well-oiled machines that are set up to deal with wartime and to deal with crisis. So they are really great organizations. And what they're doing at this time for MedTech is waiving membership. And this is an RFI. An RFI is really important. You cannot hop on the purchase order if you don't do the RFI. So request for information is more than what it sounds like. If you don't do that's your entry point. So it's a request for information. You see, I have this solution. The next bullet is Air Force Ventures. Air Force Ventures just got $1.5 billion to lead the DoD's engagement with small businesses for COVID response. They have an excellent website. If you just do AFWorks COVID or Air Force Ventures COVID, you'll get to their very excellent website. They have all the materials you need. They do have certain focus areas. Again, I mentioned some things already: decision support, personnel needs. So science, there's a little more DoD focus, personnel needs, but you might have something that suits both, right? EMTs, say, and Department of Defense has a lot of first responders as well, obviously. Readiness, like an antibody test is another hot topic. So not only testing for COVID, but testing for who's safe, because obviously that tells you who can go out on the front lines now, right? What Army doctors are free to just go and keep going, and who can go overseas and not go, infect people in the Sudan, right? And again, the antiviral coatings or things that can be activated quickly in UV, things like that. This didn't make the list. USAID is open. That is open only till April 8th. Again, it's an RFI. USAID is a neat solution, vehicle for many companies. Have something that's more of like a kit, something that's more on the front line, something that's low cost. So the question is, if you just need, something that people in Colombia can afford, or I don't know, pick a nation, Sudan, again. So consider USAID as well. A really great aggregator website is this MITRE website, aida.mitre.org. I've been posting on LinkedIn as well. I'm going to update. I just have an article. I have 2 articles. I'm going to aggregate my 2 articles and add on some new links. It was too messy to stick all the links in here. And I was on a webinar with the COVID Healthcare Coalition this morning, just listening in, and that's c19hcc.org. Go look at that. They're begging people, please, to be data-driven. Everyone is dying, like people who are synthesizing this information and making decisions, whether that's AFWorks or NIH, CDC, FEMA. They really need help with the quality of proposals. So as always, when you're making a proposal, my top advice to people is don't make them wait. Don't make them wait to understand who you are. Drop names early and often. You want to mention, that you're ISO compliant. You want to mention, if you're Harvard affiliated, great, page 1, right? Who's important in your group, drop names early and often. If you have a great supply chain, mention that early and often. And if you're following certain protocols, early and often. And on the previous slide, sorry, I'm talking really fast, a lot to share. There is let me go up and I'll remember it. page up. Sorry, the America Makes RFI. This is more of a traditional request for information, I think. They're not handing out any money, but they're helping to do some matchmaking and consolidate information. And in particular, this is more around PPE and ventilators, but you can get your drawings approved. To give you some indication how bad the information is people were planning to make ventilators that would suffocate people. Okay, so there's such a rush that they're trying to make sure that bad ideas don't go forward. The flip side to that is if you submit your design with them and you get approved, it's like you're NIST approved, right? There's also a NIST call, I believe, for manufacturing. So I apologize, I'm not familiar with what all of you do. You're all welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn or through email, stacy_Swider@uml.edu. My background is in industry. I started this job 18 months ago as staff at UMass Lowell. Just a little bit about me, but I'm staff and it's my job to support small companies. So I'm on a grant to do that myself. So I support people pro bono, so it's okay to reach out.
Thank you, Stacy. That's awesome. I think what I'll also do is afterwards, if that's all right with you, we'll share these slides with everyone in the follow-up email just to make sure they have it and your contact information. We did have a couple questions really quickly, if you don't mind. One of the questions that came through are, do applicants for these processes have to be US-based companies?
Generally, yes. Because it's US taxpayer money. So I'm not 100% sure. I have a Canadian team and I need to run that down for them about if there's exceptions for, say, NAFTA.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, the safest thing is to find a US partner.
Okay, so that's what you would recommend for non-US based companies?
Yeah, but I'll try to chase that down.
Okay. Brian, did you have any questions? I don't want to dominate.
I just was wondering if you've seen any calls for building field hospitals and things like that.
That is a great question. The Army is currently building field hospitals. They are our national experts in building field hospitals. Obviously, they buy stuff from somebody, right? So who have they been buying from? In some ways, you can go on beta.sam.gov and look at, find, I don't know, do a clever search. You could figure out who they're buying from now.
And then say you are part of the life-saving chain, but you're not directly involved in COVID. So if you deal with fallout from COVID complications, do you recommend that people try to jump on that? Or do you think that they're just not looking beyond the PPE, ventilator, rapid test kit, etc.?
There is a lot of interest in telehealth. There's a lot of interest in supporting, helping with the emotional toll of COVID workers. So people on the front lines are struggling emotionally. And I know in the Air Force call, they're definitely looking for telehealth, teleministry. So medicine, spiritual support, and psychological support. Did that answer your question?
Oh, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And Stacy, I really do appreciate you pointing out for companies, right? This is a crisis and it's the crisis of right now and it's a big thing, but don't retool your entire business for this particular crisis. I think it would be interesting as you learn more and as we all learn more about the things that may be future planning for other types of crises, right? So if there were, products that could be doing more monitoring in hospital to understand the antibodies ahead of time, right? Who has a certain type of antibody that means, they're more or less susceptible to things like this. It could be really interesting to track those things. It doesn't seem, though, that the future forward thinking other than COVID-19 is something these grants are really looking for.
I think in NIH, they are definitely making some big pushes in epidemiology, early notification. There are a lot of firms that are really good at that already. They scour like media stuff Interestingly, from what I've read about it, a lot of the early notification actually still comes through traditional press. And I don't think that story is getting out a whole lot. It's just some of the scrapers are better at picking up traditional press than others. But NIH is also concerned about flu pandemics.
Okay.
So other coronavirus is one family. The other families are definitely on people's radar screens as well. And long-term, look at, one thing that's interesting is some of the countries that responded better to this crisis with public health were ones that suffered from MERS and SARS. And what's interesting is that a lot of it is around face masks and public distancing. So I don't know. I don't know how much like epidemiology can actually prevent the outbreak of these things, because they really have a lot to do with human density.
Interesting.
Humans in close quarters. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I thank you so much for answering all these questions and for giving us your time today. This was incredibly interesting. Really do appreciate it. Okay, and I think we're going to switch over to our last speaker for the day. Scott Schorer, are you ready to roll?
Hey, Rachel, always.
Awesome. So when you speak, I'm seeing your phone. I'm not sure if anyone's seeing your video or if you're still on video, but I know I think it's coming up as speaker.
How about
Maybe
now?
I can spotlight your video, I think. There you go.
Yeah, you can join me, I think.
Awesome. So just to give everybody a little regroup,
Does that work?
It does.
Okay, good.
We asked Scott to kind of lead us in a discussion about, and we're hoping this will be a discussion, so please feel free to chime in. We want to talk about how to inspire teams remotely, right? How do you drive success when everyone's so scattered and has 50, 100, million things going on? And how can you use the current technology that exists, but also, a lot of communication to keep inspiring? So we asked Scott to share kind of some of the things that he's been doing with his firm, and hopefully we can get some more input from everyone else as well.
Great, thank you, Rachel and Brian. And our philosophy is Mathematic is amazing. We'll do anything we can to help anytime. So we very much appreciate the community that you have built and how that's helping us all get through this. So thank you guys. It's just as an aside before we get into this, it's been really fun we have a great community of medical device and diagnostics companies in Massachusetts, and flipping through the attendees on the call today has been really fun. I saw my fellow AdvaMed Excel board member Randy Barco on there, Amy Siegel, who we work with as a consultant, Angus, of course, everybody knows Angus for forever. Our company founder, Andy Levine, I saw on earlier. And then a good chunk of my team, and I hope they're on because it's not because they have other work to do, but they're here to support. But I know they have a lot of other work to do, but it's great to have everybody on. So we're in the middle of, for our lifetimes, unprecedented times. Clearly, if you go back to Spanish flu or World War II, you can pull other examples, but for our lifetimes, I think this is much, much worse than the global financial crisis in terms of social and economic impact. And I just say that it's going to be very difficult, but we need to focus together on getting through it together. And certainly I'll say a few things, but we don't have all of the answers. We're not trying to sound like the experts in this. We're trying to find our way through this as best we can, the same as everybody else. So the first thing before we get to how we're keeping the team together, there's some very important triage that has to occur. So we're in the middle of the US pivotal trial, and number one of paramount concern for all of us is patient safety. So we had to first make sure that we were doing everything possible to minimize patient risk for implanted patients in our current pivotal in the US. What further heightened our concerns is our patients are type 2 diabetes patients with cardiovascular disease. And those are the top two comorbidities and metabolic disorders that lead to current understanding of COVID-19 mortality. And so we're especially of heightened concern about those patients. So we have issued risk management guidance. We have weekly calls with all sites, well, almost daily calls with each individual site, but weekly team calls with all of the sites together. We've obviously suspended enrollment, and we're just making sure that everybody is communicating very, very effectively. And communications is going to be the key theme throughout this. Number two, we're all, I'd say, I don't want to overgeneralize, but many of us are in thinly or lightly capitalized startups. And other than the global financial crisis, this couldn't be a worse time to try and raise capital. We're in the middle of a capital raise right now. One of the reasons this company is still here, GI Dynamics, and I probably should have started with that. GI Dynamics is focused on having an implant for type 2 diabetes and obesity. We're headquartered in Boston in the Seaport District, and we've been around since 2003. 4,000 patients implanted to date, and running a US pivotal trial, another pivotal trial in India, working on getting our CE mark back, and we're raising capital. So that's where we are. We're public in Australia as well, but former VC back, so Domain, ATV, Polaris, and then strategic support from Medtronic and J&J. So that's our background. Number two, triage cash, because if you run out of capital, then you're not going to be around to fight another day. We very much appreciate the efforts on our behalf, on our state and federal level, and with the trade associations, with Mass Medic Help, with MDMA, and then I'm on various boards at AdvaMed and very aware of what's happening from AdvaMed. And the SBA loans and potential NOL reforms can be transformative in helping us survive this. So our team is looking at every single dollar that we can stop spending, defer payment on, working with our vendors. We have multiple clinical trial systems that are on a monthly payment basis, and we're trying to freeze everything so that we can continue when our sites are able to start enrolling again, whenever that may be. So that's kind of the foundation. My view on this is if you don't take care of that, then it doesn't really matter what else you're doing, because you won't be around, or you will have failed to protect your patients, which is an unforgivable sin as far as I'm concerned. That said, everything else relies on a shared purpose of the company and our employees together and our shared mission. And the work to achieve that had to have started years ago, because that trust and that working relationship that is critical within the team in order to get you through these tough times can't happen like instant grits. You got to cook them slow. It's the only way to cook grits. If anyone's lived in the South, you know what I'm talking about. So you can't stomach instant grits. You can't just snap your fingers and expect to have a functional, tight team that's going to be what is necessary to get through this time. So it started years ago or months ago. And then it all comes down to communications. So one of the things I've learned, having led multiple companies, that how important communication is. In the absence of communication, human nature will generally lead people to believe that things are much worse than they are. They're going to fill in the blanks, and often in not a positive manner. So we constantly communicate. We have daily, and this is not magic, but I'm sure everybody's doing this. You have daily team calls with the individual working groups. We have, I send out an email once a week. My executive team meets once a week. And then we do some fun things like Friday socials, where we, cocktails are optional, but welcome on the call Friday afternoons, and everybody gets to see each other. We're implementing virtual team lunches, so I'll join different teams for lunch, and we're subsidizing the Uber Eats or Dine and Dash, whatever food delivery to your house for lunches, so that we can all have virtual lunches together. The video aspect of Zoom in this case is really critical, and we are using that as much as possible. And then, of course, there's the humor aspect. And so using Zoom, you can put your own background up. This is conference call bingo. This is the number one. It's in the center. Sorry, I was talking on mute, because, I don't know, is that backwards? I think it's backwards, or I'm just seeing it backwards.
No,
Whatever.
you're seeing it backwards.
Good.
It looks good.
Oh, that's so funny. I didn't know that happened. And then we always have all these nice little things. It's green screened out. Look at that. But you can have different flashcards that you can pop up now and then. But humor is critical. Yesterday we canceled work for April Fool's Day for 5 minutes, and then uncanceled work. And I think I got a few people with that one. I definitely rely on my definition of humor at home, which is it's funny if I'm laughing. And so we generally just try and keep things as light as possible, given how difficult the circumstances are. And I think one of the big things is to remember we're not going through this alone. And if you feel isolated at home or feel like what you're dealing with is unique to you, it's probably not. So reach out to your peers and talk to partner companies, similar companies around you, and share best practices. It'll really help. I've been on a personal level. We've started my college buddies, our fraternity is doing house meetings like we used to do in college every Wednesday night, and they're generally going now 4 or 5 hours on Zoom. We have one guy who's in Switzerland, and he got on the call at 2 a.m. and I think went till 6 a.m., which is pretty impressive. And there's a lot of silver lining in here as we've reconnected with people because we're not so frenetically traveling all over the world. We've been able to reconnect with people. My wife's happy because I'm starting to whittle through the to-do list that was not getting much attention. So, but one of the things we have that's really a wonderful resource is MassMedic, MDMA, and AdvaMed, and we're members of all three. Like I said, I'll do anything I can to help out Rachel and Brian, specifically in that order. And love you too, Brian. And I'm on the board of AdvaMed Excel, which is the small companies less than 100 million in revenue, and AdvaMed, the main board. And there's just an extraordinary amount of work that is going on that is benefiting all of us. And we have multiple calls a week focused on what's happening, what we can do about it, and working on best practices for managing through and leading through this crisis. So I think probably MDMA and AdvaMed might be suspending membership fees right now. But if you're pre-revenue like we are, it's very inexpensive, and it's worth its weight in gold in joining those because you get so much real-time information. And then obviously MassMedic is our mass-focused and local guys, and they're fantastic. So there's a lot of information out there. If you're not availing yourself of it, then you're missing out. So I'll pause at the risk of talking too long. I'll pause for a second and see if there's any questions, Rachel, Brian.
Scott, that was great. Thank you. And I like that I beat Brian in the tier. Also, I think a couple people have chimed in online that we all now want to join your happy hours or your lunch meetings.
Sorry, it's BYOB.
Exactly. I did want to make sure if you have any questions for Scott or if you have any thoughts, please feel free to chime in on the chat bot or take yourself off mute. We have a smaller group. I think some people had to jump off at 12, but there's still a good 60 of us on here. So if anybody wants to chime in. Brian, did you have any questions or thoughts?
Just an observation. GI Dynamics, I remember back in the financial crisis when GI Dynamics was one of the few companies that had a massive funding round. So I got a lot of faith that you guys are going to pull through on this one.
Well, that was the original team. Andy was still there, and Stu Randall was the CEO. And if you're in the medical device industry in Boston, you know Stu. The company went public in 2011 on the Australian Stock Exchange, or ASX.
Yeah.
So in the aftermath of the GFC, raised 85 million, I think, on an IPO. And we've communicated this publicly, just so you don't think that we're sitting flush with cash. We've communicated that we're cash out in May of this year, and we are trying to close a round right now. So any of the SBA, for example, is absolutely critical for us, as well as our current fundraising activities.
Well, Scott,
so we're not we're in the firing we're in the firing line right now.
We can feel that, and I thank you for sharing that and for all the other great words of wisdom you had today. Certainly, we're all going to have to get through this together.
Yeah, and it feels like I'm closing, which is great, and I agree with you, Brian. I would just say that if there's ever a time where leadership is critical, it's now. And as leaders, and I know there are many on the phone, it is about taking care of your team and your patients that are implanted or treated with your products out there, and generally at all costs. And this is the time where you need to be a leader, and that can be, not assuming that everybody's handling this the same way. Everybody's going to handle it differently. Don't assume that everybody's doing well, and it changes. So somebody could be handling it well and then having difficulties the next day or hours later because it's a very unstable environment. So it just really goes back to the basic principles of leadership and communication and being present and being there for your team to help everybody get through this. And as we say, we've been through. We kind of joked that we're on our fourth cat because we've been through at least 27 lives as a company, and so that's 3 cats worth of lives if you do the math. So hopefully we're not on our way to our 5th cat. We're on our 4th right now, but we always kind of say to ourselves as a team, it's never easy. It's always worth it, and we get through it together as a team. It's the only way to get through it.
Great words. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
I'm going to just kind of close out with a little vignette here. I think what you heard really importantly from Scott and was this concept of community. And I was on a call the other day and it said the average person, epidemiologists tracked that the average person has 22 human interactions per day on average, which is why things like COVID-19 can spread so fast. And it struck me how much I miss people in my life. I miss the interaction every day. I miss the lunches, and I miss just the ability to run into somebody and see them, and to realize that there are things that we're suffering from that we don't even think about. Human contact is essential for most of us, unless you're very, very introverted. But even then, I think you still need human contact. Most of us are going through a severe level of deprivation in terms of the people that we get to interact with. And we don't know the toll of that. But what we can do through this and through MedTech, I'm hoping, is that we can create this sense of community. And this community will stand back up again. And we are having to do this at the same time as never before has our industry been more vital to the continuance of our world. I'm doing this while on the front lines. So I just want to echo that we are a chance for you to have some community. We pledge to continue to do these, not only these weekly town halls, but we're doing other things. We had a great pitch deck happy hour on Tuesday. We're going to do more fun things, and we're going to keep talking about how we get through this, because we will get through this. This week, the state officially took over the donations of PPE that MedTech, SBIR, Mass Hospital Association, and the Coalition for Teaching Hospitals stood up almost 3 weeks ago. We have collected tens of thousands of pieces of PPE, and those are now in the state stockpile and being delivered by picked up and delivered by the National Guard. Our industry is going to lead us out of this. We, having been intimately involved in the state response, we are the ones that need to provide the ideas and the intellectual capital to get us through this crisis. Don't ever think that what you're doing doesn't matter. 3 weeks ago, we had almost zero strategy at the state level, and it took 4 trade associations coming together to say, what the hell can we do? And now thousands of pieces of equipment are on the ground. And we're not stopping there. We need to figure out how to get everybody back to work. And that's going to require another tremendous effort on behalf of industry to figure this out, because we can't have a community where we have half people with antibodies and half people who are sick. We cannot have a split workforce. To get us back into the workforce, it's going to require another almost Herculean effort of innovation. So I assure you, MassMedic and our partners are thinking about tomorrow's problem. We can let the state worry about today's problem. As an industry, we have to continue to worry about tomorrow's problem, because that's the one that's going to matter the most. Getting us back to work is going to be the one that matters the most. And the state needs to take care of triaging what's happening now. It's critical. And they need to protect the workers and all the other people on the front lines of this crisis, including our workers, and we're trying to do that. But I can assure you, we are spending all of our time trying to think of the ways that we can continue to make this end this crisis and as expeditiously as possible. So I want to thank all our speakers today. I want to thank the Congresswoman. I want to thank Anthony. I want to thank Stacy. I want to thank Scott for your incredible talk today. But I also want to thank all of you for joining us on the call. Thank you for supporting MassMedic. We need you now more than ever. And thank you. That's all we got. So thanks. Rachel, let's take us out.
Absolutely. So we will send out a follow-up email to everyone on the call today with all of the presentations, and we'll make sure we connect you with the speakers. Use ML strategies, reach out to Stacy, send Scott a happy hour note, stay connected with each other, right? This is important. So we hope you will join us next week for another virtual town hall, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Have an awesome rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Be well.
Bye.
Bye.